Quick disclaimer. This episode contains some audio issues throughout, but is significantly mediated by the 20-minute mark. Trevor Wisecup is a fascinating artist, and I hope these small technical issues don't inhibit your enjoyment of the conversation. Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear
Can you hear
me?
me all right? Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, good, good. All right.
How's it
So
going, man?
it's going all right. It's going all right. I'm dealing with some bureaucratic issues between my dentist and my workplace, but apart from that, everything is going fairly smoothly for me. How's the day been?
Okay, it's going pretty well. I really apologize that I missed 4 o'clock. I actually was moving a bookshelf with all my negatives and books and whatnot with my girlfriend. Actually, she was relaxing, and it just was a neurotic thing where it took over me today, where I just was like, because it's been in our hallway forever since we moved in, and it just bothered me. So I apologize for me. I looked at my phone after I finished, and I was like, oh shit. So I apologize.
No worries. No, my setup is literally,
But
I
but
don't know.
but I've had a good day.
That's good. That's good. I mean, you're saying that this bookshelf was in the hallway of your apartment or the hallway of a building and not inside your apartment?
My apartment, my apartment.
Okay. I mean, so I mean,
Yeah.
do you have a somewhat spacious apartment or
It's a railroad, but
uh,
it's 2 bedrooms.
what's
Are you? Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. It's from someone from Virginia. Probably doesn't know what a railroad is.
is it cheap because it's
They're
near?
pretty rare. They were predominantly made. No, no, it's the layout of an apartment. So it's called a railroad apartment because it's designed like a train car where you
Okay.
you walk through all the rooms simultaneously. Not
Okay.
simultaneously, but they're all connected. So in certain railroad apartments, it could be like a 4 room layout. So there's 2 bedrooms, there's a dining room, and then there's the living room. But in order to get to the back bedroom, you have to walk all the way through all doors. So
Hmm.
you have to walk through another one person's bedroom. So that's why it's called a railroad.
Okay.
So I live in a railroad, but it's only there's a bedroom, then there's a kitchen, then there's the living room, then there's another bedroom. So it's a railroad, but it's actually a good railroad because it doesn't interfere with any other rooms. But most railroads apartments do interfere with rooms, so they're typically cheaper in New York or in general because they're harder to even today to adapt into like modern living because they're just they were built for low income housing like in the 1900s 1800s for like Irish immigrant all the immigrants. That's what they were made for 20 people. So yeah, you don't see them very often. Most of them have been updated, but
Yeah, now that you mention it, I am somewhat familiar. I took a trip to New York in 2019 and stayed with a friend of mine, and his apartment was formatted in this way as well. And it was a very I liked the trip very much. I was there for maybe a week or so, but it was kind of an interesting experience because he invited me to stay with him, and I just kind of had assumed there would be a particular level of hospitality when I got there. He just had like a very, very
right.
terrible futon and like no sheets, no nothing. And so again, like it was a fun trip, but every night we would get home and I would just have to lay, sheetless, coverless, pillowless, just across like a very, very old, terrible futon. And it was quite an
Wait,
experience. But
you're telling me your friend wasn't hospitable enough? Your friend wasn't hospitable enough to give you anything?
so so
That's kind of
so
fucked up, man.
So I don't think he had much in so this I used to do stand up, and so this guy was a comic and he was a little peculiar, and since then I think his mental constitution has degraded to the extent where now if you see him you go oof, this man is clearly like kind of clinically off the reservation. But at the time, he was just my eccentric pal. So I thought that, I didn't know that that would be the extent of what he was kind of capable of. But he was otherwise completely polite. I don't think he had the second sheet. And the other thing that was peculiar is, again, he had like, I think, two additional roommates, but his room, again, through his strange logic, he couldn't afford furniture. So instead, he made all of his own furniture out of like cinder blocks and pieces of wood. And you could tell that it was like degrading the engineering of the floor. Like the floor in this apartment was like slowly bowing because he had like put so much
Oh
weight
my
in this one
goodness.
room. Again, I'm confident you can just probably get like free furniture if you look online or something, but he just put cinder blocks in there.
Oh, you can. Oh, I mean, well, he definitely was an eccentric person that
Yeah.
is off his rocker if he's doing that because you can find some of the best furniture ever just on the street. I found some really good shit over the years, like
Mm.
that I would never have paid, the money that a secondhand place would charge for it.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't want to say one thing interesting about this apartment though is I've lived in 7 or 8 apartments at this point since I moved to New York, and
Mm.
this is the only apartment where the floors have slants in certain areas,
Mm.
which is not concerning, but I like the character of it because in the hallway it's a very long hallway. That's why it's a railroad because you open the door immediately, it is like 20 feet of hallway, and then you get to the apartment.
Okay. Yeah.
But in that 20 feet of hallway, there is a large rise and a large low. Like it's like a speed bump in the hallway. It's just so unlevel, but it's like the character for me is pretty cool. We have a mouse right now in this apartment. First mouse ever in New York. So I think that also explains a lot of things that this apartment has going for it. And that's not common. I've never had a mouse ever before, but
Do,
apparently this is the one. And I'm not even on a low floor. I'm on the third floor. So
did you guys have a cat?
what were we gonna?
Do you have a cat?
No, but we need to get one.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, like,
No, I don't.
but I mean, it's interesting that you say you have a mouse rather than like an infestation or anything like that, just because it seems as though you've identified that it's one mouse and it has already seemingly like a type of, position and identity in your apartment. So maybe it'll be, nice.
No, no, no. He does. He does because he
That's
he
good.
knows. They know what, or they. I don't know the gender of the mouse, but they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and it's been like a month long thing, and I see it like it like once every few days. I'll see the mouse. Like
Yeah.
we don't have leave food out, but it'll go searching anytime we order something like Taco Bell or something crazy late at night. It'll it'll come because the food will be out for a little bit, but then the lights will be off and it'll think it won't hear any noise, but the TV's on and it'll just scurry out and I'll be like, ha, and yeah, it's really hard to catch. But yes, I have one mouse, and I don't. I kind of wanted to catch it and maybe not raise it, but I kind of wanted to catch it and keep it for a little bit and then see what happens, and then if I had to get rid of it, then just let it out in the wild, but. I don't know if I'm going to catch it. We're going to get a trap soon.
Oh yeah.
We haven't been
That's a
worried about it.
180, yeah.
It's not a problem. If we were worried about it, but that's what
Yeah,
I've been dealing with.
I mean, it sounds like you have like a kind of a five-hole, situation going on where you have like one mouse in like a New York tenement building. It's like I feel like that is something like the plot of that movie. I haven't seen that since I was a small child, but I feel like it's similar to that kind of situation.
Fivel?
Yeah, a five-hole. I don't know.
Fivel's the name of the movie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how old you are, but this is a movie I think from maybe the late 80s. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's a Steven Spielberg cartoon movie about, I think it's like a little Jewish mouse growing up in like the turn of the 20th century New York.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. My
yeah.
apologies.
I'm pretty sure I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, an old reference. But I'll get started with the regular format of this interview. And as I've asked everybody hitherto, we can start our conversation if you wouldn't mind telling me a bit about your mother and father.
So growing up, my parents divorced when I was 3, but my mom had custody of me. And when I was 3 or 4, my dad decided to go to South Korea.
Hmm.
Um, and to teach because they had just got divorced. I learned a lot after, when I was 3 or 4. I didn't know any of that stuff, but I learned a lot of the reasoning behind that after that. He was lost after getting divorced, and he had this opportunity to move to Seoul, Korea, and I was 3, and my mom had custody, so he decided, oh, I'm going to go there, and I don't blame him. I would have done the same thing. I mean, he was in a dark spot, and that probably brought him a lot of happiness.
Mm.
So, anyways, I don't remember a lot of that time because I was 3, going into turning 4. So I don't remember a lot of the time that my dad was away. But then he came back because in 2002, the DC sniper situation happened, and my mom called my father and said, "Hey, Dale, like it's not great over here." And I'm sure you remember that because you're from Virginia, so
Mm.
you're aware of what was going on when that was happening. But someone had got shot in Spotsylvania, that at one of the targeting place, which was a mile away from my house. It was at a Walmart, which was a mile away from my house. So my mom called my dad and said, "Hey, you should come back." And then he I think he was only there 9 or 10 months, so he came back like 2 months early. And then growing up, he was so I became very interested in video games at an early age.
Mm.
About 5 or 6, I had a PlayStation, and I never talked about this in an interview or a podcast, but I my first obsession ever was this video game called Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoon. It's the Sly Cooper series.
Sure, yeah.
So it's animation, cartoon kind of video game similar to Zelda: The Wind Waker. It looks like that same style. Um, Anyways, I'm 6, and I'm playing the first game in my second house I lived in. No, I played a couple games before that, but I started playing that game, and I became obsessed with it, completing the game, finding every secret I could, and then I played the next two. And my dad supported me. My mom didn't because she saw, the video games as a waste of time, which a lot they are. I still think that they are today, but as a kid, it gave me a lot of like inspiration creatively. I'd say to a
Mm.
degree, like just interacting with something that someone created, and I think video games get discounted sometimes as art forms, but they
Mm.
are. I mean, a lot more goes into creating a video game artistically than me making a street photograph. So but anyways, that was a big obsession of mine was that series of games, and my dad supported me. He got me the second one in the series. He got me the third one off of eBay. And another thing that he was really supportive was so he didn't have a ton of money because and I don't want to come off talking negatively towards either of my parents, but um, at a certain point he decided to not work as much. And regardless, on weekends, what he would do is he was good friends with the guy that worked the ticket booth at the movie theater, so he had to sneak us in the back when it was his weekend, and we'd watch like 4 or 5 movies, which was great. So I don't discount for that. So my dad was always very thrifty with what he took me and the time he spent with me. And one of the things that has always left a big impression, and I'm so happy he did, is he started taking me to flea markets and thrift stores, and that became evolved into my second obsession, which was finding treasures, like finding something that was unique, that was left behind, something of the past. I think that leads to a lot of photographs I take today. I tend to try to take timeless images because I have this fascination with the past that I always have ever since I've been probably like 7 years, 8 years old. I've always loved things from the past, old ladies, anything. So when I was about 11, 12, I got obsessed with vintage video games. The original Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, N64, but the Nintendo Entertainment System specifically was a huge obsession of mine. Like collecting rare games at like age 13. I got this game called Panic Restaurant that's was worth like $200 at the time. I traded, I think, 20 GameCube games that I had bought at the flea market for this game that was worth like $200. It was one of the rarest Nintendo Entertainment System games of all time on this site called fucking Nintendo age. There was the one guy, I don't remember where he lived, but anyways, you'd have to ship it in the mail. So I shipped mine first, and then he shipped me his because he had it's like eBay. He has ratings. Like he's a trusted guy. I didn't because I'm a 13-year-old kid. I dealt small time stuff. He's giving me a rare game, anyways. So I sent him my stuff, and he got it, and then he sent me mine. And I still have the game today in the other room. That game's worth $1,000 today. I know that was 10 years ago I got the game, but it's worth $1,000 today. So I've always been like interested in very unique things that aren't common. That's just something that has always been fascinating to me. And I think even like me seeking out that game, I had done research and watched reviews online and knew it was like something I was interested in playing. And the only way I could do is if I got it. But yeah, I think that even relates today with how I photograph is I look for stuff that you're not going to see anywhere else. It's a one time moment, it's a one time thing. And I think because of my father specifically, I know it's all, we're going back to the opening question, has to do with the things he exposed me to. Because I discovered the original Nintendo at the flea market. I said, "What is this old fucking game? That's a gray cartridge." And I know you know what it is.
Mm.
I said, "What is this?" And I immediately got intrigued. So I got, the first game I got was Smash Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt. I got the system in that game, and then from that game, I kept going to the flea market, and got more games, and then looking online. I don't know if you've ever heard of this YouTuber, but one of my other early obsessions was YouTube, like 2007, 2008. I used to call out sick in fifth grade and sixth grade. I used to fake stomach aches so I could watch YouTube all day. And there was one person, the angry video game nerd on YouTube, that I could not get enough. He's just a vulgar guy. He's not kind of controversial.
What a piece of fucking dog shit.
But for some reason, I was like, I like that controversial shit, and that's why partially to this day, my personality is probably like that. I always admired someone that didn't care, but just wasn't afraid of censoring like how they spoke. Maybe not in like a political way or any way like that, but I'm just saying like it's okay to just say fuck this, fuck that. If you actually feel that way and you're passionate about it, but as long as you're not spreading hate, that it's all good. You can say, "Oh, I'm gonna fuck this guy's day up," and joke about it,
Yeah.
like I did in the walkie-talkie. I joked about it. I didn't actually mean that. I said it as a joke because you know what I mean. Like you can say that kind of thing and joke around, and I've always admired that. And I think a lot of early YouTube I watched because I watched the Whitest Kids You Know a lot, which is an early sketch comedy group that was very controversial, but they're hilarious in my opinion. There's a lot of early influences. Uh, and I'm getting away from the father question. I'm sorry because I thought of those other two and I just thought I'd throw it in there because I haven't spoke about it before.
No worries. I'll say two things real quick. One is that I do know precisely what you mean, and the thing that always comes to my mind is this notion of a sense of humor, and it's so when things are said in jest, they truly are like forceless to me. Like if someone's making a joke, whether it's embedded in media or whether it's in conversation, the odds of it being offensive to me at least are like close to zero. Like I can always register that it's a joke, no matter how vulgar or how crass it is, etc. But what thing that's a bit particular is for how much I am desensitized to vulgarity in humor, I'm quite sensitive to true disrespect. So like, someone could just be joking, And, just like one of my friends could come into my living room and just say something horrible about my mother. And I'm like, hilarious. That's fine. But if a stranger like doesn't keep a door open for me or something like that, I'm always like, what kind of person are you? Like, why? Like, how are you, like, I'm like a
Assume the
strangely
worst. I
I'm like always I'm really sensitive to like real world disrespect, but like completely desensitized to humor. As long as it's again embedded in like a joke, it pesters me none at all. But the other thing I was going to say real quick is your audio is behaving strangely to where it's as though you speak at a regular volume for like 10, 12 seconds, and then it's as though the volume it's clearly a connectivity issue, but the audio will dip out for several seconds, and I just want to I'm not sure if you're
I'll
able
fix
to
I'll
mediate
fix
it.
it.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure folks can hear you properly because I know you're talking
I
about.
can fix it. I'm just gonna take the AirPods out, and I'll just have it. Is it better than it was, or less
Yes.
better?
No, no, no. You sound very clear now, but you sound clear before. It was just that every now and then the audio would kind of like get disturbed. But hopefully it doesn't happen now. But I just want to make sure that folks can hear you. But yeah,
I
just
think it's a lot less likely that it's gonna happen now.
okay. It hasn't happened thus far since you've taken the AirPods out. But again, I'm happy to have you continue on this profile of your parents. But one thing I'm interested in is you said your father moved to South Korea temporarily to teach. What did he teach in South Korea, and how did he get that opportunity?
I don't have the answer for the it's a I think I know a little bit about the second. Okay. He taught English
Mm,
and he taught driving. He taught Koreans how to South Koreans how to drive, not North Koreans. In case you were confused. Um, how, but the thing that was always confused. So my dad said it was ESL, English Second Language, is what he taught.
mm.
Which he did. I know he did. But the thing that always confused me, and I should ask him more about this the next time I talk to him, is he didn't speak Korean. So I don't understand how my dad was able to teach English to Korean. I think they were already Koreans that knew had some sort of understanding of English, and that's
Hmm.
how he was able to do it. But I do not know the full details, and that's why I've always been a little confused. And I should definitely ask him for clarification. Now, how did he get the opportunity? From what I remember, I believe it was a colleague of his. He used to sell timeshares, funny enough, at this resort in Spotsylvania, Virginia called Wilderness. And eventually I can get back to that resort full circle, but he worked there or sold there from the late 90s, early like 2002. Funnily enough, my parents met there
Okay,
at
yeah.
Wilderness Campground. Because my mother was the manager there, the property manager, or she was the manager there, and my dad owned a timeshare there at the time. He just owned a timeshare, and he kept pestering my mom. He kept coming in every couple weeks, like, "Hey, you want to go on a date?" And she'd be like, "No, no," like six times, and then she finally said yes, and then she liked him after the date, but yeah, he wouldn't leave her alone. But they met there, and then later on, he got a sales job there, and to bring it full circle, when I was about 14, he bought an RV, a Bounder RV, like no joke, the Breaking Bad RV,
Yeah.
no joke. He bought one of those in 2012, 2012ish, and he parked it at the campground. And every weekend, when it was his weekend, my dad had me every 2 weeks,
Hmm.
so twice a month I would spend my Friday and Saturday and Sunday morning at this campground living in an RV. So I've probably lived about a year in my life cumulatively, because it was from the age of like 14 to 18 in an RV. Which was cool. We had a lot of great experiences there because we only had a VHS player at the beginning. At the
Hmm.
very beginning, that's all it had in this RV with the TV. So when we went to the flea market, all the VHSs were 50 cents. So we pick out a new movie, 50 cents, Trevor, whatever you want. I'm 14, and I hadn't seen all these movies. They're all from the 80s, so I got a
Yeah.
lot of my early culture from picking out these random VHS tapes that I'd find.
What
Yeah,
what spurred uh that situation? Like, I mean, was it just that you guys were really, really fond of that, or was doing the RV thing his way to be closer? But like, what was the inspiration to spend
save
every
money.
single, oh, just save money?
That's well, I don't want to talk bad about my dad, but he just wants to. Yeah, that's the cheapest way. You know,
But
he
was he
already pays
living in
camp
the
dues.
RV?
He buys a. uh, Sorry.
Was he there when you were not there? Was he in the RV all the time?
No, 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 no,
Okay.
no. So my father lived 4 hours away.
Mm.
So in
Okay, yeah,
2000,
that answers it essentially, yeah.
2003, he met his future wife, my stepmother. Um, and she had worked for Spotsylvania County for 25 years, and she retired. And when she retired, they moved to King George County, which is a county over from Stafford, and he lived there for about a year and a half. And then in around 2005, I guess her name's Hope, had a conversation, and his name's Dale, by the way. And they said we're going to move to North Carolina. They found a property in the woods, on the water, for a good price, and they moved there. A 4 hour drive, 4 hours away. So every 2 weeks, my dad would drive from. It's Greenville, North Carolina. It's a smaller town, but it's by Greenville, North Carolina. So from there all the way to Fredericksburg, it's 4 hours one way. So 8 hours every weekend,
Hmm.
every 2 weeks. Sorry. So the RV was to have a place to stay the weekend, because initially at the beginning when he moved there, it was Ramada Inn.
Yeah.
Ramada Inn's not cheap, so why not buy an RV? He already had a timeshare at the Wilderness. So that's how it happened. I
Yeah.
also
Well,
I also was a Boy Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I camped in the woods on a lot of my weekends. Uh, so it really wasn't a big deal for me camping in the RV. It's actually a step up from the rest of it. So as a kid, it wasn't that. Yeah,
yeah. But I mean,
I,
also,
I
I
have a,
mean,
I have a lot of backstory that people don't know that I don't want to say makes me tougher, but like I'm not just a kid that sat inside playing video games all day. You
no,
know what I
you can
mean?
tie many knots. We know this, but no, I
No.
mean, also, I mean,
Uh,
the RV solves an issue of time consumption as well. I mean, I imagine just like having to pick you up and then drive the 4 hours back. If he has you just for the weekend, it probably just makes a lot of sense that yeah, just to stay put, and then yeah, obviously you don't want to spend Ramada money every 2 weekends a month is crazy. But honestly, my father had a similar situation where I'm the child of his second marriage, but my older siblings, they're from Beckley, West Virginia. I live in Roanoke, Virginia, which is about a two and a quarter one-way trip or whatnot. But they came to our house every other weekend, and but obviously it's in the 2 hours you can do it. But we would go back and forth all the time and pick them up. Um,
but
but yeah.
growing up as a kid, my how my parents worked it out is it'd be a month. My mom would have me a month in the summer, and my dad would have me a month in the summer instead of the. So I'd have a month in the summer starting at like. It wasn't like that at the beginning, but I'd say around probably age 10 or 11. Start having the month in the summer in North Carolina. And I'm gonna say I was pretty resentful of it at the for a lot of that time because my dad's a very different kind of person. How do I explain this? He doesn't like. I don't want to say he doesn't like people, but he likes being far away.
Hmm.
He likes not being isolated, but he doesn't like people close by. Like his closest neighbor is probably, I don't know, 300 yards away, which isn't like it's close, but like it's not super close. There's only
Yeah.
like 10 people in his like on his road, and
Hmm.
then to get to I think the population in his town is like 800 total. So it's not many, and he's right on the river. Anyways, he doesn't like people. So growing up, going there for the week for a month, and it's all up to my dad. And not to make it sound bad, but once I got older, especially once I became 15, I got a phone
I think I got my first phone at I think 14. But it was still like a Nokia. It was still like a text. You still had to text on it. It wasn't an iPhone. I didn't get that until I sophomore year. Anyways, the kids nowadays. I know you didn't have that, but
That's true. Yeah, I
um
didn't.
uh but once we were in this age where I had a phone and I'm 15 and then I have friends and then I become interested in girls for the first time and I want to talk to them. What happened was I go to North Carolina to my dad's for the month, and he doesn't have Wi-Fi. They don't have Wi-Fi there. Seriously, they don't even have connection for it. He only has an antenna, and there's no cell service. So I go there for a month, and I can't talk to anybody. No joke. It was awful. Well, in my mind, it was awful. You know, in the grand scheme of life, it's nothing. But at the time, that's the end of the world for me
Hmm.
because I'm a 15-year-old boy. You know what I mean? Um, and I still kind of have a little bit of a complicated relationship going there because I know if I go there for a week, he still doesn't have Wi-Fi. I can call him. I can call him. He has a phone, but he still doesn't have Wi-Fi. He still uses an antenna. Uh, he is yeah. Like I know that I'm gonna be isolated once I go. I don't have a car. He's weird about letting me. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. He's a weird guy. I love him. I love him, but
Now that you're this age and this phase of your life, how often do you go to that location?
um, I haven't been there since early 2022. It's been a
Okay,
couple years.
yeah. Yeah, been a minute.
It's been a couple years. I when I so before my mom passed, I took her to Key West.
Mm,
So I came from New York. And I went to Spotsylvania. Sorry, Stafford, Fredericksburg. I drove from Fredericksburg all the way to Key West, and I drove all the way from Key West back to where my dad is in Greenville. And we had a stop there. My mom, where my mom, my sister was there with us at that point. She had flown in to Key West Airport. But anyways, um, we got a hotel there, and then my dad came and picked me up. He said, "I want to see Trevor for a couple days," and he it was probably like I don't know, 45 minutes from his house. And then my mom drove back to Virginia, and then I stayed there for a week, and then my dad drove me back up to my mom's house, and then I took care of my mom for 3 months. Sorry, no, that's not exactly how it happened. Drove back to my mom's house. I went back to New York for a couple weeks. My mom called me, said you got to come back. Then I stayed there for yeah. Anyways, that's the last time I saw my dad was 2022. Well,
mm.
because I was driving back from Key West, I was going through North Carolina. My dad was like, "Can I see you?" But no, I haven't been back there since. I'm planning on going there soon though.
Mm. Two questions on that subject is, you're not going down there to this kind of desert kind of location where your dad is, but do you and your dad have a fairly cordial relationship at this
Yeah,
point
yeah,
in your life? Okay, yeah, it's
yeah.
just it's just a matter of getting all the way down there. And then
No,
secondly,
not well. No, not necessarily. It's not just that. I mean, it's just a lot of just extenuating circumstances with my life up here.
mm,
I It's expensive up here.
mhm,
You know what I mean? And the whole time I've lived here, for the exception of a couple situations where I made money on either through prints or something, uh, I've always had a job. And I've always needed the job. I've
mhm.
always needed the job to because I shoot film. If I was shooting digital this whole time, and I got all the same photos. Sure, they'd still be good. I don't think they'd be as I don't want to sound weird, but as gorgeous. But they'd still be good, and I wouldn't be as financially fucked. But I chose to do that, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all because I still think all the money that I put into it this far and continuing is going to pay off for me.
Mhm. The-
But just for my work, I don't care about the money. I don't care about recuperating the money I put in. Just it's worth it to me in the end
mm,
to have my work that way. If I didn't shoot how I shot, I really strongly feel that I would not be as good as a lot of people think I am, or I believe that I am in my mind. I do think I'm good, but I wouldn't be that way without the process of filming, taking photos that way. I really truly believe that.
it- uh,
At least practicing it this consistently for 7 years, I think, even if I transition to shooting digital, I'm so glad that I've shot film this long because it has made me better.
Mhm.
That's my opinion.
I definitely would like to talk more about this, the relationship with shooting film a little further down the conversation. But just curiously, with your kind of addiction to film, how much does this cost like per week? Like what does your practice in film like, how big of a financial burden is that? Because I hear people, mention this that shooting film's very expensive. And if I'm not mistaken, I think people have said that recently it's become particularly expensive.
You said how much of a financial burden is it?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like
Explain
how
some
much
of it.
like when you I don't even know how many images are in a particular roll, but like how much does a roll of film cost? Like,
Okay, so in total cost for a color roll of film for me, if I'm developing scanning, like if I'm paying for developing scanning and the cost of the roll itself,
mhm,
total
sure.
$30.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, but for how many images?
36.
36. Okay. Again,
So
that's
you pay about $1 a photo. Okay. I don't want to sound because I've never been in this for the money, but I have thought about this a little bit recently because film costs have gone up. It didn't used to be that expensive at all. But because film costs have gone that up, you start to think in your brain as someone that shoots a lot of film. I shoot probably there were certain times of 2023 where I shot 5 rolls a day. I can't lie. Consistently for a couple months. I went crazy. But generally, that's not the case. Generally, it's like 3 to 5 rolls a week. But at the end of 2023 and going into 2024 last year, I did think kind of just numbers wise in my brain. I was just trying to think, because this does cost so much. If I get one good image per roll, just one good one good image that I'm like, this is good, and I'm proud of it, and I make a print one day or whatever that I sell for $100, that print pays for the roll, hypothetically speaking. If I go out with a mindset, because I'm not thinking about it financially at all, but if I go out with a mindset that the work will become more valuable than the money that I'm putting into it now, that's what it's about. I'm not thinking about it financially, but I have, as someone that has sold prints before and certain images people like, that one roll hypothetically made me money.
mhm,
But that doesn't translate to every roll. But I'm saying, like, I haven't found a reason not to keep shooting film
mhm,
because I know at the end my financial investment, I hope will pay. I mean, even for the integrity of the work, like that's all
mhm.
that really matters. But I believe that it will pay off. Does that make any sense?
No, no, it makes complete and total sense, and I think that a lot of different artists in different media could understand exactly what you're getting at here. I mean, I'm a person, so for example, I mean, $36 a roll isn't actually that far off from kind of what it costs to paint. Particularly if you're painting anything large format on a canvas, you're going to eclipse $36 for the one image that you could totally screw up. At least with your $36, or sorry, with your $30, you get 36 opportunities. But for example, with painters, you could reach for a cheaper surface or reach for a different type of paint or a cheaper version of a paint or a cheaper brush, all sorts of ways to cut costs. But I think that folks, I mean, sometimes certain products are more expensive, not just for the sake of it, but because there's a utility there. And then people develop this kind of rapport with these better materials. And then, like you said, they have their imagination extrapolated out to the future where they go, I want to paint this thing. And what if one day this is in someone's collection? Or what if one day this is in some sort of museum? Do I want to be the guy who painted it on the Michaels Econo canvas with acrylic, or does it need to be,
Right.
oil, and does it need to be on a nice smooth gessoed surface, etc.? Because what if what I'm doing is important? I want it to be important, and so you're kind of hedging, you're ensuring your work for the future in a way by giving it the dignity. And additionally, I think that the folks who will eventually, again, fingers crossed, buy this kind of work, it's like, what kind of person are they interested in? A person who's serious and who's investing in what they do, or not that kind of person? So I think it's, the folks who do any kind of artistic craft with some seriousness, this is kind of the way it must go. Is it costs a little bit. But one thing I'm interested in, and again, we'll circle back and we'll talk about the photography in detail. But you said, maybe you sell a print for $100. Is that like a normal price? I'm kind of curious because the way you price paintings is super willy-nilly. Like, it's really, really random. And additionally, I think that paintings have an advantage to where, because they're this different type of artifact. They're not a photo. Because I think maybe like iPhones and things like that have probably created a lot of turbulence to people's perceived value of photography. The painting, despite its own quality, has this different value because it's this different type of artifact. And so the notion of
Yeah.
someone who's entirely amateur just being like, hey, this painting is, 2 foot by 2 foot. So, I mean, like, what, $500 seems pretty fair, eh? It's very easy to kind of inflate the price of a painting. But how does, you and maybe other working photographers, how do they come up with pricing? And then is there, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious of, is it complicated to sell photography not to publications but to collectors of photography? And how does pricing of photography work?
Sure. I just wanted to say one other thing about the investing in yourself, like with like your materials, in this case being film. Uh, I have like 600 something rolls that I've already shot in my fridge. From I don't know, May 2023 to now. I mean, I've developed a good amount over that time. Over 150 rolls during that time, but I still have that many rolls that I've already shot in the backlog. You know what I mean? So I've already like kind of put in the work. I've gotten to a point where sometimes, I have a day and I want to go shoot, but there's just certain times where I'm like, if I really need to grab or see some extra, not extra, see some new photos, I have this crazy backlog in the fridge that I can just be like, grab 2 rolls, go to the lab, let's see what it is. I don't know what I'm getting at this point. I kind of like the surprise. I've always been someone that's loved being removed from work for a long time. You take a photo, you're a little emotional, and you take it. Sometimes you take a photo and you're so excited, you're like, this is going to be great, and then you get disappointed. I've a lot of this has been circumstantial. A lot of the reason why I've built up this backlog right now or in the past before is because I haven't always had the money to develop film or pay for it. But in hindsight, I've kind of loved being removed from that emotional gut instinct when you see a photo you just took
Hmm.
4 days ago or literally today, going home, looking at a memory card, being like, this is great. And then in a month, you're like, it's okay or not. It's okay. It's pretty good, but it's just not it. You have such an emotional connection because you just took the photo, and that diminishes over time. Sometimes it gets greater as your photo, is better than you thought it was. But when you take a photo, you are much more inclined to being emotionally connected to it than you would if when I go develop a role that I took a year and a half ago and I see the photos, I'm not going to have that initial emotional connection I had when I'll be like, wow, I remember taking it, but that's all removed. I'm just going to judge what that's a good photo or that's not a good. I don't, it's been helpful to a degree. I'm not a normal person, so people don't usually do this, but I have found it helpful in a lot of ways.
So this is a very
I'm sorry, I
curious.
completely avoided your
No,
question
no,
because I
no.
just wanted to make this point to
No,
make.
no, not a problem. You don't even need to answer the other question. I have a different question now. This is very fascinating. So you have 500 rolls in your refrigerator. I think you said maybe some of those have been developed. I'm not entirely sure how that process works. But what I am curious
Oh,
about is,
I was saying over the process of me shooting these roles because I know that they date back to May
sure,
2023. I have developed, 150 roles during that time, but my oldest roles that I still have undeveloped is goes back to that late.
sure. So I mean,
But over that time, I've developed roles, but I keep adding more and more because I keep shooting because the work never stops. It's like the mail never stops.
How is there any process, any system to understand what these rolls in your refrigerator are? Like, are these rolls just have a little date on them? And like, I'm kind of curious if just like, for example, I guess maybe I have two little questions to try and get at my point. One, if you're out and some very particular phenomenon takes place and you shoot it, are you like, I am going to pull this out of my camera and isolate this roll and get it developed ASAP? Does that occur? And then also, when you take one of these things out of your refrigerator to get it developed, is there any selection process as to which roll you're pulling? And then when it is developed, is it a complete novelty? Do you know what images are on this thing, or is it literally just like pulling memories from the ether? Like, is it a complete surprise?
So for the most part, it's pulling memories from the ether. But over that time, there has been certain roles that I did label saying, "Oh, I captured Tyshawn Jones, one of the most famous skateboarders, jumping over this Bugatti, $5 million Bugatti." Like I know that role. So
Hmm.
certain roles, certain days, I will be like, "Oh, I just posted a set the other day that was of a gurney, and then there was like feet in the background, and I labeled that role Harlem Gurney Feet photo. Like sometimes when I know I've taken a photo and I might have that inkling that I was telling you, the emotional connection,
Hmm.
I'll say, okay, I'll write down the photo, a little short description of what may be on this role. But usually, for the most part, it's pulling from the ether. Almost all the roles that I mentioned have no label on them.
Hmm.
Almost every role. I'd say 95% of it, which is fine. Which is fine. No, I wish, in hindsight, I wish I labeled it. I do. But I mean, at this point, I've started labeling a lot more recently. I used to be super obsessed with it, super OCD. I think my first 700 rolls, I had a notebook. I labeled the date I started it, the date I finished it, the camera I used, the film, every detail. Not every like f-stop or shit, but every detail of every roll for the first like 700 rolls. And then life changed. Just life changed and I stopped doing it.
Hmm.
And now it's messy, unfortunately. My archive was perfect up until like roll 700. Now it's not. It's pretty fucked, but it's fine. I'll get to it. I have time, hopefully. Knock on wood, but
When you say the archive record is fucked, is that particularly important to anyone?
yeah.
Is it your collectors? It's important to collectors?
Yes, but no, it's I'm not someone that can say this about my work.
Hmm.
But in as certain individuals, Robert Frank is a very one of the most important photographers of any generation. Any generation. His negatives, his archive was acquired by Steidel, and Steidel publishes his book to this day, The Americans, one of the most famous photography books of all time. The basically it's the Bible. It's the Bible of street photography and documentary because it's not just street. But in 2000 for not a lot of money, like I think it was a mill, maybe a couple $1 million. Not much money because Steidel has since published his book at least 3 or 4 times, and they've made many millions off of that archive. So yes, the archive is very important, because that's where the negatives come from. The negatives are where they scan the photos, which are printed, and you know his art, acquiring his archive was extraordinarily important to them, because to scan all his negatives at the highest quality to be able to print to make a profit. Yeah. Did you hear all that?
Yeah, I did hear it all. It's very interesting, because when I first asked you that question, what came to mind is, for example, I just kind of assumed that the market would be able to hold its nose at a technicality like that in the sake of you're saying, oh, there's an artist. The artist is eccentric. They are at the whims of real world forces. And so and maybe not, maybe the turn of phrase isn't cut a corner, but they made this concession, and who gives a fuck because the artist is the artist and they're doing what they're doing and this is how they had to do it. And what comes to mind sometimes is there's still a lot of popular, very, very, very popular and lucrative pieces that come from artists with pretty humiliating pasts, maybe someone who committed a crime or something like that. But what's interesting about your answer was your answer is about the monetization of the work. And so I now can a bit imagine of why that might be quite an issue if it's not archived so well. But nonetheless, at least you have a segment of it that's properly recorded, and potentially you'll have the opportunity to record everything properly going forward. And this will be Trevor Wisecup, the crazy years or something like that. They'll volume it, but just to try and jump all the way back, because again, I know we'll end up landing at your photography. Your father was a timeshare salesman who was partially motivated by, by the courting of your mother. He got a strange opportunity to go teach English in South Korea and teach Korean people how to drive cars from the American perspective. I'm not sure how that wound up for those students, et cetera, et cetera. What did your mother do?
So the thing about my mother was she was very stern,
Hmm?
very business centric,
Hmm.
very by, and he raised my mom. So she moved around. She's a military brat, as they call it, military kid.
Hmm.
Uh, so that applied to me as well. She was very stern. She was very strict. Whatever she said goes. And I don't love that. I never did. I was always kind of like I don't know what word you want to say. Not stubborn, but I was always just like I don't fuck with that. I just don't. I just like it's not a respect thing. Like of course I respect, but even elementary school, I was a little bit of a class clown. Like I just didn't understand why things had to be always so serious. Like it's
Hmm.
just not that deep. I never thought understood why things were always so serious. Like I understand structure and all of that, and I think it's important, but I don't know. Anyways, so what you're gonna gather from this, I feel, is, and I'm gonna talk more about my mom, but my mom and my dad were polar opposites.
Hmm.
My dad, so my dad, I didn't tell you this before, but my dad did some really, really cool, in my opinion. They weren't the craziest thing in the world, but some really fascinating artistic drawings in the early 70s, and I still have some of them. And they're not the craziest thing in the world, but I could see I really admired them, and I can see where a lot of my creativity comes from, and a lot of like things that I'm interested in from a genetic standpoint, and it's all from my dad. It's not from my mom. My mom didn't relate to that. She was how do I, you know she just wasn't artistic, and
Mm,
it's not a knock on her. She's just not that type of person. I mean, look at all these politicians. Most of them aren't artistic. Some of them are, but she was a goal oriented, hardworking. Got to make money, got to do this. I want to take a vacation. You know, that kind of person, and that's and I love my mom for that because see the thing that was a problem with my dad is he might have had that creativity part, but he didn't have the hardworking drive part. And that's
mhm,
why it never took off for him. And that's not a knock on him but he just is not that guy.
mhm,
And my mom was a hardworking person. So I've always attributed my creativity to my dad or my interest in art to my dad and my mom giving me my hard working, got to keep taking more photos, got to keep pushing it, got to keep sharing it, got to keep being who I am, being authentic. I got that from my mom, the hard working part. But the creativity part, that's all from my dad. And then, what else is me is just my perspective of, my photos, I think.
mhm,
That's my part. But those two aspects come from one side from my mom, one side from my dad.
mhm.
Um, I mean, I got a ton of more things I could say about my mom. I'd probably need another question though.
Sure, sure. Well, you said when your mother first met your father, she was managing the wilderness, this kind of recreational venue. Is that what she did throughout your childhood, or did she have other jobs?
Well, so we'll transition into Prudential use is now Berkshire Hathaway, but Prudential used to be a huge real estate firm, but now Berkshire Hathaway bought it in like 2012 ish. So now it's Berkshire Hathaway. But anyways, she worked for a real estate firm as the office manager for about 18 years. And then she moved to another property firm after that, but she was the property manager. So she started to manage all the houses for this firm. And then after that, she left and she started her own company called Wise Management.
Hmm.
Not Wisecup Management, Wise Management. And she managed about, I think at her peak before she passed away, I think she had 35 or 40 houses that she managed independently. So she became her own boss. For
Hmm.
the last 5 or 6 years of her life, she was her own boss. So she called all the shots. But yeah, I mean, she was a manager.
Hmm.
She was really really good at that stuff. Excellent. I can't do what she can do. I can't do
Yeah.
that stuff. I'm not good at that stuff at all. I am OCD. I do like things a certain way. I can be good at labels depending on life circumstance, like I was at the beginning with my photography. So I have that part of her in some regards, but I'm not like her in terms of yeah, I can't do what she
Hmm.
did.
Um,
But I think I got the best of both of them for sure, 100%. And then my
uh,
own interest growing up formulated where I am today, I believe, and it keeps going that way and expanding.
mm. So I mean, again, as you stated yourself, and as I think someone who sees a glimpse of your persona as broadcasted from your social media, your mother is this strict, sober, kind of a, super bureaucrat, essentially. Is there
No,
any
she liked to have fun. She liked to have fun. I mean, I don't, it's always tough to how much I can really discuss because she passed away, and I mean it doesn't matter at this point. She smoked a lot. She smoked a lot of weed.
Mhm.
She loved it, especially when she was on chemo and stuff, and that really helped her, and we smoked a lot. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if anyone knows, but forever. I'm saying like that was her thing. Me and
Mhm.
my dad. My dad is a huge pothead. My dad, even to this day. But like, yeah. Um, no, she wasn't a square at all. But
Okay.
growing up, I have a sister, by the way, that I haven't mentioned yet,
Mm,
and she's a half sibling, a different father, who entered the picture shortly after my parents got divorced. His name's Chris, and he was a bad alcoholic. So because of that, eventually they split up, and you know, something my mom did that I didn't always love growing up, and I still don't, but she would constantly just repeat someone's flaws
mm,
in conversation, just I guess to drill it in your head. So, I think of Chris, I think of an alcoholic. Because she would always be like, he's a worthless drunk, he's this, he's that. She'd say the same shit about my dad. Not that, not the alcoholic part, but
mhm.
something else. Like
Yes,
doesn't have a job.
flaws.
She'd
Yeah.
say that all the time. Draw. Um, and she did that to me. You know, we didn't have a perfect relationship. If I did something wrong, you're this, you're that. And that caused problems with us growing up. So we didn't have, there's stuff I still haven't revealed to this day, and I just don't think it's right at this point. But we didn't have a perfect relationship, but we interest, whether it was Nintendo, playing Xbox Live heavily, and I, I've talked about this one time before, but that was the first way that I was able to talk to strangers. And I think without Xbox Live, no joke, I don't think I'd be as good at like handling conversation and talking to random people all the time. Because I really believe building up an experience of like just not even knowing anyone, but like I really think it helped me. It's strange to say, but I've thought about it in the past few months about why was I always you, I've always been outgoing, and I was always an annoying kid in high school. I never shut up. I think this interview shows you that, this podcast. Um, so I've always had that, but being able to talk to strangers per se and just being comfortable in whatever situation, I think really helped with Xbox Live. And my mom hated that. I used to play Black Ops 1, one of my favorite games of all time, nonstop. To the point where my mom would be like, come down to have dinner, and I have to tell people we're playing zombies. I have to say, make a crawler and keep the round going because I got to go eat dinner, and I'm going to eat it in 10 minutes. And as soon as I'm back, we're playing. And I would do that all the time. I was obsessed with it and
I'm not
almost
sure
did.
if you can hear me. Your audio went crazy right as you said that you would be on Xbox Live and that you would tell folks that you were going to rush and eat dinner in 10 minutes. Are you able to repeat the end of your comments from that
Yeah,
point? I
give me one
apologize.
second.
Sure, yeah,
Give me
my
one second.
apologies. And again, in post, I can kind of chop some of this up a little bit just so there's none of these pauses.
Dinner. 10 minutes. All I was saying was that eye to eye on things that I was interested in growing up. It was always like, which was Boy Scouts, which I eventually became an Eagle Scout because that's what I had to do.
Mm,
And, I'm proud of it and I'm glad I did it. But, that was what Valerie, my mom, wanted me to do. Uh, because it was more, useful and the video games weren't useful or the old video games that I was interested in collecting weren't useful or whatever. She just didn't understand it. And I don't knock that from her. It's just that I got that part from my dad and I didn't get it from my mom.
on that note, I'll ask one more question about what you were just speaking to, and then we'll just talk about your photography for a little bit. But so your mother, again, you said, like you said, she was an army brat. She took a lot of that kind of regimentation from her childhood and applied it to her own life and had a very successful career, etc. And again, you were this kid who some of those really, highlighted values of hers were just not in your nature. Is there like a funny or not so funny anecdote from your childhood where you guys just particularly butted heads? I mean, clearly you were able to, um, you know, reflect her values to the extent where you became an Eagle Scout, but were there any things where you were just like completely at odds that is notable?
Mm, funny, but not funny.
Either
Oh,
one.
like something that she wanted me to do and I enjoyed.
No, no. I mean, I'm talking about something that where you guys were completely opposed. I mean, like, was there a certain situation again in the story? Can
Uh,
either be a funny
so,
story or
so
a not funny story?
it's not funny, but well, I didn't get this far in, but the next thing that I really really loved doing after the playing game stuff was thrifting,
Hmm.
collecting, and well, I used to source it for a couple of different people that would resell it. I would go to the bins and I would buy whatever I wanted for myself and a bunch of stuff that I knew they wanted and some other stuff on the side. And then I would source it to three different other people and I'd make all my money back plus a lot more and keep whatever I wanted. And I did that for about 2 years, the last year of high school and then a year after high school, right before I moved here. Um, but she opposed it because she thought it was dirty, it was gross. She didn't like anything secondhand. It had to be new. She just she didn't understand any value in it at all. But then I bought her. Oh well, here's a funny one. I found an authentic Louis Vuitton clutch there, a classic design, and I gave it to her, and she said, "Oh, this is gorgeous. This is beautiful." And I said, "Well, I got it from the Goodwill bins." And she had no problem with it. I guess that's the funny one I could because I
Hmm.
gave her a couple of things from there's some hats, some stuff, some Nike hats, some things that I knew she would like, and she had no problem. But it got to a point where I had so much stuff in my room that I was like organizing, sorting through to who I was going to give it, give it to or sell it to, and she was like, "You can't have this shit in your room. You can't do this. You can't." And it was a problem. It was a problem. She just thought it was dirty stuff. I don't know. She didn't understand that part. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. That just was her thought process.
I do know. I think I can empathize with her slightly. It depends on how quickly it's moving. Like I guess if from her perspective, if it has the visual of a business and the inventory is moving out as quickly as it's coming in, or maybe a little faster than it's coming in, then everything is very kosher. But like
Right,
if it's
right.
just collecting, she's like, "Oh no, my boy's
No, no, it
buying
wasn't like
Goodwill
that.
stuff."
No, it wasn't like that. No, no. I did good. No.
My other question again, just to get us on the closing topic of your photography, is a pretty a kind of silly question, but how did you get involved in photography? I guess both immediate, like I guess your first foray into photography, and then how did you get into photography in this very serious capacity in which you're in now?
Um, I didn't really have so that year after high school, leading up to moving to New York, I found I think it was a Canon A1 or maybe it was a Nikon with some lenses and I was interested in shooting it because it was something from the past. I was always intrigued by things from the past. So I saw this film camera. It was 2016. No, it's probably like January 2017. And I was like, I see an old camera. I was intrigued what the process was, but I just had no idea how to go into that. I didn't look into labs, where to get film. It just didn't seem graspable at all. I found the camera, but it did not seem like I kept it, but it just did not seem like there was something I could get into at
Hmm.
all. So that was probably the first interest was I saw it. I had a little point and shoot too. I found the point and shoot. I put a roll of film through it, some shitty Fuji, and I never ever developed it. I still don't think I've developed it to this day. I think
Mhm.
it's still at my dad's house, but and then I had a Polaroid that I found, and I did shoot, I think, two rolls of Impossible Project. At the time, it was Impossible Project, but now they bought Polaroid, so they're called Polaroid. But anyways, it's a long time ago. So I shot like two Polaroids, which is about 16 photos. But I had no I wasn't like interested in photography or becoming a photographer. I just took a couple photos, and then I moved here, and the girl that I was dating was taking a class at the School of Visual Arts, a darkroom, just a photography 101 black and white. And then she had 5 rolls left over, and my other roommate with her was actually a photography major at the same college, so he had been talking about film and just photography in general. And just immediately was like, hey, can I shoot those rolls of film? I'm in New York. I just moved here. Probably it was November or early November, late September, October 2017. And then I was at Columbia, and I've told this story before, but someone showed me Daniel Arnold's work, who's a big inspiration for me. And then, yeah, I don't remember how the events transpired, but got to a point where I was like, "Can I please shoot your film camera with the leftover film?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm not using the film." So then I shot the last 5 rolls of black and white film, and she developed them for me in the dark room and printed them. And I said, "Oh, this is." Immediately when I started shooting actually on the street, those first initial rolls, I was pretty hooked, but it took me at least 2 or 3 months to shoot 10 rolls initially because I was scared. I was scared, and it was the winter. I started at the worst time to ever take
Hmm.
photos. New York in the winter, it's just like you're cold. Like it was the worst time to start taking photos and go out and try to be some or try to do something. But then the spring happened, and I got the Leica finally, and it got fixed for my dad, and I guess that's the origin. The best I could sum it up.
So if you
I shot a point and shoot at the very beginning after I think that early January 2018, right after I started shooting, I bought an Olympus Stylus Epic on eBay for about $80, which that camera is like 300 now. But I bought that, and I worked at Columbia University at the time at a coffee shop. So when I would go to work every day, I would just take the Olympus with me, and I would shoot low light, no flash for the most part with that Olympus on the subway forever. Not forever, for but I worked at Columbia for 2 years, but I brought it almost every day with me for a year and a half. And eventually I transitioned to a Yashica T4 I found in New York. But yeah, I was a point and shoot guy every day on the subway, like every day for the most part. But when I had a day off, I would take a Leica. But when I didn't have a day off for some strange reason, I only ever had a point and shoot going to work because I just didn't think it was worth bringing the Leica with me, to go to the train and to take the train all the way to Columbia to leave because I worked the evening shift, so I just didn't think it was worth it. So for some reason, I shot a point and shoot for forever. Sorry.
these first cameras that you're mentioning, these kind of vintage cameras, I mean, in a way, I'm kind of interested. I mean, like, you talk about these memories you have with your father and your father kind of embedding you in this world of some vintage things. And then you have this interest in actual, vintage purchasing and inventory in a way and having this kind of side hustle, etc. Do you think that this whole culture kind of primed you to be
For sure.
particularly fascinated in these cameras?
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other things that go into it. I'm lucky that I got, I like an M6 early on to start shooting. Like, I kind of skipped a step that a lot of people, you know, do. Usually people just buy a camera and then they buy an M6, and unfortunately they're super expensive. But I was very fortunate that my dad gave me one. But yeah, like the vintage aspect has definitely been a huge factor throughout my life in general. That's how I dress. That's how my look is. Like it's just yeah, it's been ingrained in me as a person forever. Just I love to this day. I watch YouTube videos constantly about the past. I just love learning about history. That's a huge reason I'm even into photography is history. It was my best subject in school the entire time I was in school. I can remember facts. I can remember dates like nothing. Like you give me a historical date, I'll tell you what it is. You like for some reason dates I can just name. You get ask me one right now, just a random one, just a random huge historical date. I think I could get it.
A huge historical date? Yikes. I don't know if I'll know any.
That you know.
Oof, I really don't think I'll know. I mean, maybe like 1860 fucking one, two, or three. I think it's got to be one of them. Something in there.
No, no, you're right. Well, well, Lincoln was assassinated on Good Friday, April 20th. But yeah, I mean, 18. You got the Civil War. The Civil War is all in there, but
I know
All
the
those
Civil
there's
War.
dates in there for
The
every
Civil
year.
War is somewhere in the middle. What I was aiming for is I know there was like a toppling of like the Mexican government somewhere in there, and they installed like a Republican government, which like led to
Oh, are
the
you talking about
installation.
Are you talking about Texas?
No, no, Mexico. Mexico. The factoid I'm thinking of is like the installation of like an Austrian emperor in Mexico, but I don't know. You've challenged me to a game that I'm bad at. I don't know any special historical dates.
Well, what year was Charlottesville, the Battle of Charlottesville? Like 1863?
No idea. No idea.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, yeah, no, I have zero clues about these sorts of things. I'm not particularly savvy in this way. But the one thing I was going to ask you real quick about the M6, was this simply a gift from your father, or did he own that camera?
Oh, he owned it.
Interesting. So I
It
mean,
was it was broken.
was he a serious
So he
photographer?
no the so my name is German. It's Americanized, but it derives from Germany. We're German, and my dad has always been fascinated with genealogy and lineage. So he likes having the German roots because I don't know whatnot. So he was interested in when he bought the camera in 1995 because he was always interested in photography. He likes nature and landscapes, but he bought a Leica because it was German and he saved up his money and he bought one. I mean, but yeah, I mean that's really the story. That's the reasoning he bought it was just because it was German. There was no other reason. He just wanted a nice camera they could bring on trips to the woods or on vacation to the Bahamas or whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
simple enough. So again, I know you don't have
anyways, it
no continue. I apologize.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was simply going to say, I know you don't have too much time, so I was going to try and do just a quick rapid fire to get a few of the things I was curious about. So again, I'll try and end things just on the note of about your photography practice, which I think is kind of particularly captivating, which is I think saying quite a bit. First off, because I'm so primed to be interested in paintings, which are quite different from photography, but additionally, I think it's very hard to be a captivating publisher of photography on Instagram, which is an ocean of this media, and yet to be someone who's publishing images that do catch someone's attention and kind of rise above into the level of fine art is an interesting thing to do. But I'm kind of curious, through your artistic registration, it's you also made a mention of before, when you were somewhat of a novice going to your job, that you were shooting slowly. I assume you said that because now you maybe shoot a bit more carefree or something like that, or at least more rapidly. But I'm kind of curious, as you shoot, what sort of things are you looking for, if that is even a conscious kind of decision? And then secondly, when you develop and you see these images, then what's that second phase of curation like?
Um, I mean, basically, when I'm shooting, I'm just trying. I'm not. I mean, I'm not going out there looking for anything like anything specific. I have images in my brain, reference points from images I've seen from the past, whether I've taken them or I've tried to take them or someone else has taken them. I always have reference points in my mind that I've seen, but I'm not going out there looking for anything. I can't expect anything. The best images come at the time that you least expect it. That's the thing, the beauty of street photography or documentary or whatever you want to call it, is that you never know what is going to happen. It's not even luck based. It's just you just never know what's going to happen. You could I've heard stories of certain people, and I have stories myself, but a friend of mine, Daniel, took a photo of this garbage truck on fire. The trash is on fire in the garbage truck, but it was at 6 a.m. right outside of his building, right? And the reason I bring that up is because if he didn't live there and he was up at 6 a.m. to take that picture, then it wouldn't exist. But that's just how it happened. That's the beauty of this type of photography. You can't really go out there expecting or looking for anything. You just gotta, over time, you build up an eye, what you've seen before, what you haven't. You train it, you stuff like that. But no, I'm not looking for anything. I there's certain images, there's certain things that to this day I have dream shots. Some of them are a little not morbid, but a pregnant woman smoking a cigarette is a dream shot of mine. Like it's pretty fucked up, but if you got that photo, it would be captivating. And I actually saw a woman smoking a vape the other day who was very, very pregnant. It was fucked. I didn't get the photo. It wouldn't have translated, but I'm just saying, I'm not looking for anything out there. It's whatever comes to me. And I am grateful for whatever comes to me.
Mm. And then again, so once you develop this and you're looking, again, I don't understand how this process exactly works, but I presume that you're vetting what it is you want to make. I don't know if what it, when you're looking at a roll of negative images, is every single image developed, or do you make selections in that moment of
Yeah,
what gets
every
developed?
role's developed, and then I make selections based off of you know, if I'm proud of the image. I'm not going to share an image I don't think is up to a certain quality.
Mm,
But I think images are better than others, even when I share them. Absolutely, I think certain images are stronger. But anything that I put out, I'm proud of. These are the selects that I make from the negatives. Everything is developed. But yeah, certain photos, even in a post of 10, there'll be three that I really think are better than other ones, but I still think the rest of them are good or pretty good and worth sharing.
mm.
And that's just my practice. And yeah, I mean, that's how I make my selects. Is really what I'm proud of. I'm not going to put anything out that I think is shit.
So one thing I think is interesting, kind of, or I mean, what I'm trying to get at is, your body of work is
Is this the
simply,
last question? I'm
yes,
sorry.
indeed. Yeah, no, this is the
Is this
last question, then I'll let you go.
okay?
I- is there, I guess the last thing I'll say is, when I look at your work, it seems to be the theme maybe is simply what you are interested in a way, because it looks like the images bounce around thematically in a way to a few different things. But from my perspective, the thing that I find most interesting about some portion of your work is the kind of absurdism or surrealism of it. For someone who doesn't know what the streets of New York are like, if they were looking at what you produce, you depict, I think, the streets of New York as a toontown in a way. And as someone who's been to New York and walked it, it's like you typically, I think, leave feeling somewhat impressed by New York, but you portray it as this place that's like almost kind of nonsensical, dreamlike. There's all sorts of peculiar images. And so I guess my last question for you is, what is that common theme that you would maybe like to have attributed to your body of work so far?
I understand. Yeah, things do bounce around, but it's that's a good question. I would say it's not really surrealness. I'm just going for authentic moments, just period, like across the board. Whether it's a photo of my friends, intimate loved ones, my mother, my girlfriend, Faith, whether it's anybody or it's anyone on the street. I feel like I could be wrong because I interpret my work one way and then anyone else can interpret it another way. But I feel like when I intermix photos that are personal and photos on the street, I feel like the you can still see the common theme and you can still see the same type of emotion, whether it's a street photo or it's a personal photo. I'm still trying to take photos. No, I'm not trying to take photos the same way. It's just the way I take photos.
Mm.
I feel like they are intertwined and they work together. But that again, that's me interpreting the work. Other people could have a different opinion of that. But I think you said something about surrealness. I was going, or more of a, like a whimsical fantasy kind of. I don't know. Is that what you were saying?
I mean, only again, I look at some of your images, and sometimes the images seem as though what is interesting about the image is sometimes just, for lack of a better word, like sometimes they're just kind of zoomed in and it's fascinating. There's one of like, of what appears to be something like blood leaving a trash can. And it's again, that one maybe is morbid. Sometimes the
Right,
image is
right.
interesting because of a geometric balance. But when I glance at your work, what I leave and what I remember is like the absurdness of some of the images you catch, whether it's just a
Right. The
person
absurd.
who
Yeah.
looks very bizarre or
Right.
whether it is a very particular and strange scene. Again,
Okay. I see what you're seeing.
yeah.
What you're saying. Yeah. So okay, with that aspect, when it comes into the absurdness, I always just try to mix the absurdness, the subtle, the quiet, the personal, all together because it's all part of life and it's all the same stuff I'm seeing. I try to have my perspective as in it's what I see, it's what Trevor sees.
Mhm.
This is somewhat, I've always thought of it like this way, somewhat of a diary, a visual diary, because every photo I take is a moment I experienced in my life. It's a moment I captured, a moment I saw and decided to take a photo.
Mhm.
I took it, I saw it that way, and it's my unique vision. And I think it all works together that way because it is my unique vision. And I'm not trying to take, a personal photo different than I take a street photo. It's just my instinct, and that's how I work.
Mhm.
So the absurdness, yes, while it may be like something that I feel a lot of people might initially think of my work as absurd, a lot of photos that I might have from the past that are absurd, that is just one aspect of my work. There's so much more that goes into it, and that I feel I'm just as proud or more proud of the photos I've taken of my mother or of Faith or of my friends as I am of the street photos or the absurd photos that you may have mentioned.
Mhm.
I love them and they're just as great and as good, but they don't mean as much to me. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yep. So again, my apology. You cut out right there towards the end, so I'm sorry if I paused slightly. But again, I know you have to go cook dinner and do everything. So again, I thank you so much for being able to connect with me this evening. Thank you so much for your time. It was extraordinarily fascinating. Again, you're the first photographer I've spoken to, so it was really interesting to just hear about this kind of whole creative practice from a completely different perspective. And again, I thank you so much for your time, and I hope it was an enjoyable conversation for you as well.
Of course, it was a great conversation. I really appreciate you, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dinner. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You as well. Have a great night, man.
Later, man.
All right, bye.